So, now, yeah, yes, I can hear you. Perfect. So, hello.
Hi.
Thanks for joining the Volla Community Days here. We are many people visited from Europe, the conference, and other people are following it from YouTube. Hello, nice that you joined us.
Hi. My name is Pierre Lessig, as already told by Mr. Wurzer. Thank you for having me. And yeah, I represent Phone Tech as a Service. We're offering a rental solution, a service solution for especially German companies, and that includes also the Volla setup, such as the tablet and the Volla phones. So you're able to rent these goods at our place for 12 up to 48 months, including insurance, and without having to spend the investment of 719 bucks or 6082 at Verio. And yeah, you can go at our place at neo.phonos.de and see all the devices that we offer, and especially the Volla devices. And yeah, I like to thank everybody who's attended to that event in person and as well online in a virtual attendancy. So I hope you have a good time, and it's a good time to talk about freedom, a good time to talk about privacy, especially at the time we have now. Everybody remembers the last 4 to 5 years, and something has changed in the world, and we realize it's time for a new solution and for new ways. And I think Volla is one of the parts that could offer you a perspective to go a new way by using your mobile phone or your tablet without having to use Google services and all that stuff, and just being the owner of your private information, or in our case, of your business information, because our clients are business owners, are companies, small, medium businesses in Germany. And these companies as well take a deeper look into data security and how they can manage to prevent, what should I say, not legal interventions by external organizations or persons, because these are threats that come up more and more, especially in all that cloud data environment you have. I mean, the most modern companies work with Google, or they work with yeah, tools such Salesforce, Office 365 as well, you name it. And yeah, it's time to think about alternatives and how they can solve your needs, how they can bring, yeah, a new way of making business or making your private space easy and an alternative way. And yes, that's something I can just recommend, to take a deep dive into all these new solutions and what is on the market by now.
Thank you very much for your greetings. Phonelos.de. Ja, mit Phonelos auch nochmal auf Deutsch. Sie können dann wirklich haben ein rundrum sorglos Paket, wie wir das hier schon mal sagen.
Deutsch machen, wenn Sie wollen. Das ist gar kein Problem.
Ja, ach, da sind Sie wieder. Ja, das war nochmal eine kleine Zusammenfassung. Ja, aber
ja, gar kein Problem. Also, as well in English as in German. So, also wir bieten eine flexible Mietlösung natürlich für Unternehmen in Deutschland und möchten damit auch ein bisschen Freiheit schaffen, weil wir glauben, es macht keinen Sinn, Kapital in Gütern zu investieren, die relativ schnell altern. Wobei ich natürlich hoffe, dass gerade die Volla-Phones auch in 3, 4 Jahren noch nicht so gealtert sind, dass man sagen muss, dass man sie austauscht. Thema Reparaturfähigkeit, Updatefähigkeit etc. pp. Aber das sind natürlich Themen, die uns bei vielen anderen Produkten immer wieder begegnen. Wir kennen den großen Apfel und wir kennen auch die Suchmaschine, die mittlerweile Geräte anbieten. Und da ist die Update-Unterstützung natürlich nicht immer auf dem State of the Art. Und das Thema Datenschutz ist ein Riesenthema. Deswegen offerieren wir natürlich auch eine Mobile Device Management Lösung in unserem Partner Visionen, die auch in der Lage sind, die Volla Phones zu administrieren, was gerade für Unternehmen sehr interessant ist, weil man so natürlich ein Seamless Enrollment gestalten kann. Das heißt, man definiert Richtlinien, wie ein Gerät verwendet werden darf. und hat so die Möglichkeit, auch größere Mengen an Geräten auf Knopfdruck auszurollen und vor allen Dingen auch zu sperren, falls mal ein Übergriff sein sollte, was nicht, der Mitarbeiter, Mitarbeiterin werden beklaut und das Gerät ist weg. Da hat man praktisch immer die Möglichkeit, Herr der Lage zu sein, über das Admin die Admin-Konsole entsprechend einzugreifen. Und ja, das Ganze natürlich dann auf monatlicher Mietbasis bis zu 48 Monate bei uns auf neobonus.de. Und ja, wir freuen uns über jeden, der mal vorbeischmökert, der sich damit auseinandersetzt, der uns empfiehlt, der vielleicht auch mal sagt, okay, die ersten 20 Volla-Phones für mein Unternehmen, die machen wir jetzt mal zunichte. Wir stehen ja gerne zur Verfügung und freuen uns über alle Anfragen.
Alles klar. Vielen Dank nochmal. Vielleicht die Stadt Remscheid startet eine Cybersecurity-Initiative. Vielleicht wird das ja was.
Ja, schauen wir mal, wenn die Ausschreibungskriterien nicht zu komplex sind.
Ja, da sagen Sie was. Dankeschön. So, und dann habe ich Ihnen mal das Mikrofon.
So, hallo zusammen. Mein Name ist Al-Daref Guide von Verio. Ich repräsentiere Verio heute und ich bedanke mich, dass ich da bin. Genau. Also wir sind Partner von Volla. Wir verkaufen nachhaltige Elektronik und zum Beispiel reparierbare Smartphones wie Volla Phone Shift und andere wie TerraCube auch noch. Ja, genau. Also uns ist wichtig, dass unsere Produkte länger genutzt werden können. Und ja, genau. Also wer neugierig ist, kann uns unter verio.de finden. Ja? Und genau. Ich freue mich auf den Austausch.
Ja, vielen Dank.
Vielen Dank auch für Ihre Aufmerksamkeit.
Genau. Alles klar, großartig. Das ist
ich bin offen, wenn irgendwelche Fragen, dann bitte melden.
Genau. Immer darauf achten, bei vireo.de auf die Autokorrektur achten, sonst wird daraus video.de. Genau. Vielen Dank. Und ich freue mich. Nun bin ich sehr glücklich, dass wir einen weiteren Referenten gewonnen haben. Das ist von Mr. Eric Harris Brown. Er repräsentiert die Holochain Stiftung und wird uns etwas erzählen über die Volla Cloud und was Holochain dafür entwickelt. So I welcome Mr. Eric Harris Brown. Thank you very much to take the time to present and tell our audience, the Volla community, about the Volla Cloud and Holochain, and give us an outlook of your development and maybe some backgrounds of the foundation itself. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Dr. Ritter. It's a great pleasure to be here. So for this presentation, I'm going to answer 4 different questions. One is, you almost answered, but it's who am I? What am I doing here? The second question is I'd like to go into why Holochain matters, to really explain why it matters in the world, and I think this will help folks understand why Dr. Wertzer chose Holochain as an underlying tech for the Volla Cloud. And then I want to answer the question about how Holochain matters, how that matches the Volla vision. And finally, I'd like to answer the question about how we're making this vision land in the world. So, who am I? What am I doing here? Nominally, as Dr. Wertzer said, I am the executive director of the Holochain Foundation, the technology that's underlying the Volla Cloud. But fundamentally, that's my name, as Eric, I'm the executive director, but fundamentally I am like Dr. Wertzer. I'm a person who starts things that feel like they matter to me. I've started companies, I've been on the founding board of schools, I've started a community. And so this question is why then, that leads to why does Holochain matter? Why does Holochain matter? So I'd like to tell this as a story, maybe in 3 chapters. So if you can take your mind back to a time before the internet existed, before everybody had a supercomputer in their pockets, which is basically what a Volla phone is, the supercomputer in your pocket. But I want to talk to you specifically about what it was like to send messages before the internet existed. And the thing that I want to say is, I want to connect this to what was real about sending messages at that time, which is that every message that was delivered had a per cost, had a per message delivery cost. So before there was lots of infrastructure, that cost was that you probably had to travel yourself to some place to deliver the message. But then came infrastructure, but it was mail, telegrams, phones, text messages. Each one of those, you had to pay for the delivery of your message per message, whether it was by minutes in your voice or per text message or mail. Each one of those things had a per delivery cost. And you'll see where I'm getting with this. And it's interesting that even the early networks that were global spanning, the ones, for example, that the airlines used, which could be used to send messages to people, the protocols had in them pricing per packet. Now, an interesting thing happened with the arrival of the Internet protocol. This changed that absolutely, and it was a super deep and fundamental change. What happened there was that there was no pricing in the protocol. Now, I've actually had personal conversations with Vint Cerf and David P. Reed, some of the people who created the Internet protocol, TCP/IP, the Internet protocol, and I asked them, how come there was no pricing in the protocol? And David P. Reed said, well, that was intentional. And Vint Cerf said, well, it was kind of an accident. But what that meant was that all of a sudden in the world, it was possible to send a message to another party, to one of your loved ones, to a business partner, where there was no per message cost. But at the beginning of that story, this was only for geeks. This was for people who actually knew how to write and manage with the protocols. And non-techie people couldn't actually use the Internet protocol itself. But everybody listening here knows the next step in the story, which is the arrival of email. And email is the result of adding in two protocols on top of the Internet protocol. For the tech people who are here, those protocols were the SMTP protocol and what was described in the RFC 822 for the techies, which was the format of email messages, a content protocol, and an address standard, your email address. And email was the deep reason why the Internet took off in the 90s, because suddenly everybody could send messages, not just techie people using the deep Internet protocols, but the whole world could start to send messages with no per message cost. Now, this is a critical change, and you'll see where this is coming into our story. We'll get to how this works with Holochain and Volla. But what happened at that moment was something profound. What happened was that there was a shift in the locus of control of a critical societal function. I'd like to say that again. There was a shift in the locus of control of a critical societal function. That function is message delivery. And it moved from being something that was held by an intermediary, whether that was the post office or the telephone company, to the people who collectively held the infrastructure. Now, it didn't become free. The costs didn't go away. We still have to pay for infrastructure costs, but the power dynamics of access to control of that critical societal function, message sending, shifted radically when it was no longer captured by a single delivering intermediary. That's chapter 1 of our story. Chapter 2 of our story is very similar to chapter 1. It's the same story, but it's for a different critical societal function. The first one in chapter 1 is the function of sending messages. The second one is the societal function of publishing. Publishing information, like sending messages, also used to always have a per published cost. And that capacity was held by intermediary organizations like newspapers, book publishers, TV channels, magazine publishers. That changed in a very similar way to the way email, the way the function of sending messages changed with what we now call the web. So the web is like email from chapter 1 of this story. It's the result of the addition of a few new protocols on top of that fundamental IP protocol. Again, for the techie people who are here, those protocols are household names. Even if those of you who aren't deeply into them, you've heard them before: HTML, HTTP, and the URL. And importantly, the functions of those protocols were very similar to the functions of the protocols that made email come into existence. HTTP is a transport protocol, a protocol for how messages are sent and received, just like SMTP is a transport protocol for how messages are sent and received. HTML is a content standard how to format messages so that they can be useful in the context of publishing. And the URL is an address standard, just like in RFC 822, there was an address standard for email addresses. This is, these protocols, what they did is they enabled the flip side of the protocols that underlie email, where email is a set of protocols for delivering messages, for pushing messages out to an address. But the web is a set of protocols for pulling information from an address, which is what we know of as the web address, also the URL, right? So that's the technical side of what happened for the same thing, the shift in the locus of control of a critical societal function. In this case, the function not of pushing information to your destination, but pulling information from a destination, which is what publishing is about. It's about making information available that can be pulled. Once again, publishing and retrieving published information, it didn't become free. You still have to pay the infrastructure cost. You have to have a computer and an internet account. But the cost and the power dynamics shifted radically when they were no longer captured by a single publishing intermediary. I'm using the same words, I'm repeating the same thing, because this pattern is critical. This is answering the question of what matters about Holochain. Now we get to chapter 3 of our story. Chapter 1 and 2 are the setup. So we have the critical societal functions, publishing information and pulling information, being shifted to commonly held infrastructure of a network. So all stories should have tension and resolution after the setup, and so this chapter 3 is the tension and resolution. Sorry for just giving away the story, but that's how I'm operating here. So here's the tension. We live in a world where there is a critical societal function in which the locus of control again needs to be shifted because of the high costs incurred by the intermediaries. We all know that. That's why you're here. That's why you're actually interested in Volla phones, because they're part of the solution. But I'm trying to spell this out carefully as an actual pattern that keeps evolving. So let's be really clear. What is the critical societal function this time? Before it was pushing information, and then after that it was pulling information. Well, this time we don't really have a good name for this in the online context, and that's not surprising because the words email and the web didn't exist before that locus of control shifted. But the societal function is actually really quite simple. We all recognize it. It is information spaces. The places, the sites, the fora, the locations, the interaction spaces where we go to engage with one another for purposes according to some rules of engagement or patterns of interactions, or according to a social contract. Those information spaces, those places that we go, I like to call an engagement space, because it's where we go to engage. And that critical function right now is held by intermediaries. So where are we now? Well, in the digital realm, all of these engagement spaces, these information spaces, are structurally always held by an intermediary. The intermediary holds them in the form of what we know as a website. And notice the word site in there. The word site indicates a space, a place. And they're all held by these centralized organizations, even though they're using an earlier mechanism that did share the ability to publish. But what they did is they captured the place in which you interact, because what was published was code. And so we have this client-server relationship using the previous capacity of publishing, and now that's been captured into this really critical societal function of being able to interact with each other. So the amazing capacity that the web brought us to publish information was used to create engagement spaces. Notice how access to these spaces, you always have to log in. Think about that. You're logging into the space. Login is an indicator that you are entering an intermediated space. And this is literally what happens. You're authenticating yourself as to having rights to access the data that is stored in a central location on the website by the website publisher. Now, this is great. It's fantastic that we have this, but it's time for that to shift. And we know why. It's because the consequences of having that critical function of holding engagement spaces are very high costs. Now, these costs of participating in these spaces aren't always the per message or per publish costs, which were monetary costs. But those of you who will run businesses are quite familiar with the per seat cost of a SaaS service. For any one of those things that you want to have access to that is where you're engaging, there's a very high per seat cost. But the more insidious costs are the costs in these engagement spaces of us becoming the product and being sold. So these are high monetary and social costs that are being paid by the fact of this intermediation. It's the cost of being sold and manipulated to in our social feeds. It's the cost of loss of privacy from corporate and government surveillance. And unfortunately, these costs are structural. The web protocols that are currently in existence that are used to connect you to the spaces, whether the website that you're connected to is hosted on your personal computer on the Amazon cloud, the structure is that the website is a server. It is a central location that holds the data and the code that creates the engagement space. Your website browser is the client. That's the current structure. So in our story, I presented the tension, and now for the resolution. What if to create and participate in one of these kinds of spaces, you didn't have to set up a server to host the space? What if there were protocols, new protocols, like the old ones in the chapter 1 and chapter 2, that allowed for the establishing of the rules of engagement in the space, whether the rules of engagement are posting a social feed to Twitter, or the rules of engagement are financial, creating and tracking value, or the rules of engagement are like managing project management, like Trello boards or email. Like, all of these things are spaces with different rules of engagement. But what if there was a protocol that held the creation of those rules? And what if we could use the existing shared infrastructure of the parties that want to participate in those spaces? So just those parties could hold the information. Well, that's not just a what if. That's exactly what Holochain is. Like the examples from the setup of this story, Holochain builds on top of the internet protocols, and it provides the same structural thing. It creates protocols for a data transport layer, just like SMTP and HTTP were protocols for the transport layer of that kind of those two critical functions. Holochain provides a protocol for data transport, and it also provides shared content standards for being able to validate and secure data in the distributed context. So Holochain does for online engagement spaces what email and the web did for messaging and publishing. It shifts the locus of control of that critical function to those of us holding the infrastructure. So that's the end of my story. This is the story of how the locus of control of critical societal functions can shift away from the intermediaries and into the hands of the people holding the infrastructure. And that's why Holochain matters, because that provides the shift that reduces and changes the cost dynamics, just like happened for sending messages and just like happened for publishing. And it's possible now because all of us have the sufficient infrastructure right in our hands, right in our pockets, and right on our desktops. So at the beginning of this talk, I said I would answer the question, how does Holochain's vision match Volla's vision? Well, I'm hoping that it's pretty obvious by now, right? Volla is committed to producing connectivity hardware that's not tied to the closure of the big players. Holochain provides a means for creating engagement spaces in an ad hoc way on that infrastructure for the participants in those spaces, and that's the match. So as an example, this is exactly what happens with Volla messages. A messaging app is another example of an engagement space. And in Volla messages, every P2P conversation is its own engagement space, its own Holochain network. And it's held just by the participants of that conversation. Nobody else. There's no central place. It is just the people who are in that conversation that form a separate Holochain network, not some global space that is stewarded by a large corporation, or even by powerful interests in the middle, as happens with blockchains. And so similarly with the Volla Recover app, the backup storage is not held by a central server. It's held by those trusted parties who you use as the end users selected as your backup partners. And that is a different kind of engagement space, but one nonetheless. So that's how our vision matches. I've talked about the vision we have for Holochain, how that matches Volla's vision. But vision is only as good as how it can land in the world. And so that's my next question to answer. How are we making this vision land in the world? And so for that, like Dr. Bircher said, a little bit of background about the Holochain Foundation's history and strategy and how things have evolved. Because one thing is to have a vision, and the other thing is how to bring it into reality in the world. So when we were first envisioning the Holochain, we knew that we were completely committed to Holochain as a technology being open source and not being owned for benefit by a small group of people. And we understood how notoriously difficult it is to fund deep level open source infrastructure like that and keep it open. So we took on a strategy of creating a for-profit company that would provide a service built on top of Holochain that could fund Holochain's development. But we would ensure that the benefit of that for-profit company would feed back into the community by ensuring that the not-for-profit foundation, the Holochain Foundation, owned that for-profit company. So the company that we founded, many of you know of perhaps, is Holo Hosting. And Holo's mission is to provide cloud hosting where the crowd is the cloud. Sound familiar? Where the individuals who were operating holoports, which were computers that we built and delivered through an Indiegogo campaign, similar to how Dr. Wirtzer builds and delivers hardware through Kickstarter campaigns, where people who would own those holoports would provide a bridge between the decentralized world of Holochain applications and the old web-based world. In other words, Holo would fill a business niche in the existing web ecosystem, web hosting, but it would do so by bridging to the decentralized Holo world. And I'm really happy to say that Alistair Ong, Holo's director of product, is, I believe, here and will be giving a demo of some of the work and the progress and the capacities that company has come up to and can show. So even though parts of that network, the Holo network, are centralized, which actually makes sense, right? It's the part that maps domain names onto Holoport and Holoport-based web applications across the world. That's a centralized piece, but it follows that the pattern for hosting that Holochain creates for the ethos of creating distributed shared infrastructure held by many, many participants. So back to the strategy of how we are landing in this world, part of the Holo strategy involves creating a new way for accounting for the value that Holoport owners could provide as hosts in the Holo hosting distributed network, using what we call a mutual credit accounting system, one in which we named HoloFuel. Well, our funding strategy was to sell an Ethereum-based ERC20 token, HOT, as it was called, as a utility token that will be convertible into this accounting mutual credit system when HoloFuel goes live. But in the meantime, HOT can also be used to pay for Holo hosting directly. So you can read the details about this if you're interested in going in detail in that whole strategy on the holo.host website. You can look under resources and white papers. All of that is really detailed there. I'm not going to go further, but this is for me giving context to the Volla community about how the Holochain Foundation had a strategy to build this kind of deep infrastructure in the world by having a for-profit arm and a for-profit side that could build up the infrastructure and fund that happening. Another phase in the story of the development of Holochain is the organizational strategy that we had. And until recently, all of the operations of building out Holochain and the Holo hosting infrastructure and the HoloFuel accounting system all happened under the aegis of the one company, Holo. And the foundation existed almost entirely as an ownership steward. But as of last year, the foundation has begun operations, managing the Holochain development team and evolving its capacity into a much more full-fledged and normal, in a sense, open source infrastructure foundation, similar to others in the open source ecosystem. And we did this because it was the appropriate time. Like when we started operating, multiple businesses had too much overhead, but it became time to split up and have more operational and more independent operational capacity. And at the same time, we founded another for-profit company called Unit. It's also fully owned by the foundation, and it is taking further the development of the Holofuel accounting system. Why did we do this? We did it because we discovered that there was a demand and an opportunity to create much more value for holders of HOT and for the ecosystem in general by having a generalized accounting system for distributed infrastructure, not just one-off for the whole hosting network. So this will allow Holofuel, as an example, to account for value not just for Holoport owners, but for other systems participating in Digital Infrastructure Hosting Alliance. So this is much like how airline miles can account for value across different airline companies by creating an alliance. And that same Holochain application being built by Unit, this capacity built on top of Holochain, can also be used for other types of distributed infrastructure projects, one now is what is known as DeepIn projects, and where they need to do accounting. Things like distributed energy networks or AI hosting of AI processors, or processing of video networks. So we have got a bunch of people who have come to Unit who are interested in being able to handle that. And so now we have these three organizations that can more maturely build out these different capacities. So that provides a little context about the organizational strategy we have, how we're bringing this vision into the world. But I think before we move into a question and answer period, I want to express some gratitude, but I also want to speak to another key aspect of what it takes to bring things into the world. And that is partnerships. It is the taking on of strong, strategic, win-win partnerships. And that's what we have between the foundation and Volla. So as I've demonstrated, there's a strong match between our two projects on the vision level. I'm really grateful that that vision was seen early on. A number of years ago, an ecosystem member by the name of Hidayat Abediju came to Volla Days, to the Volla Community Days, and he saw that and presented here. And I'm grateful to you, Dr. Werther, for recognizing this potential and carrying it forward in a strong partnership. On the operational side, since then, we've put lots of efforts and resources into collaborating with the Volla team, building out Volla messages and Recover apps together, creating the Volla Cloud engine that is the Holochain runtime for powering these Holochain-based applications on Volla devices. And that has been really fulfilling. It's part of the strategy of delivering this kind of capacity into the world. Another partner that I'd like to highlight right now is the one the foundation has with Dark Soil Studio, which is one of, if not the premier Holochain development house. Dark Soil brings deep expertise into bringing mobile Holochain onto mobile platforms, and I'm really excited that this partnership is going to be expanding to include Volla, as I know that later in the program there'll be a presentation by Dark Soil's CTO, Guillem Cordova, on the integrated development environment for building these Volla Cloud Holochain applications. So that's really exciting to me. And finally, I think, to close, probably the most important partnership to talk about. This is the partnership with all of you. It's the partnership with the people who come early to new technology and use it when the edges are still rough. In the story I told earlier, I described how the key shift that's needed is moving the locus of control of a critical societal function away from a controlling intermediary into the collective hands of those holding infrastructure. That's you, people holding Volla phones. There's an important caveat to this kind of shift of control, and that is the caveat of the willingness to take on responsibility. In practice, what that means for us together as partners in holding that control is recognizing that things will actually be a little different. When you shift how things operate that way, things become different. And if you've used Volla messages, you'll notice that creating a conversation between parties has different steps than it would in a centralized messaging system. And that's because there's a reason for it. There is no intermediary that is holding a list of all the phone numbers that have joined the system, right? That's the problem. The problem is that there are intermediaries. It will even the P2P systems that are holding all of our phone numbers and our identities. But with Volla messages, that's not the case. And so we take on the responsibility of passing the contact information to the person you want to talk to, and then confirming the return conversation invite code. This is an example of what it's like to be in the different world when we shift that control. And it'll be different too when you use Volla Recovery. There's going to be a different pattern for establishing the trusted networks where you share backup, where you establish a trusted network to share your backup and restore responsibilities. It's not going to look the same. So to end with, I just have to say thank you for all of your partnership in stepping into the responsibility of a world where the locus of control moves from intermediaries to us, to those who are holding the infrastructure together. Thank you. And I'm very
Yeah, thank you very much for that speech. I'm impressed. So thank you very much. And let's give other people here in the room to ask questions. Has someone...
I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
That would be nice. Thank you for the talk. In my preparation, I saw a demo video of Holochain, and you told us that every time we need to log in, we are by such an immediate...
I'm sorry, the audio went away. I stopped hearing you.
Maybe we can change it?
Is this one working?
Yes, I can hear you now. I heard you said that you saw a demo and...
Okay. I start the other way. You told us that there is every time we have to log in, we are logging in by some intermediate company, and this company has control or is in the way of the communication. And in preparation to this event, I watched a demo, a Holochain demo, and it was, I estimate, 30 to 40 minutes of continuous logging. They showing a Holochain demo, and it was really, it was all the time. I have to copy this account and this crypto thing here, and I have to log in here, and they not really had a use case. Do you know this demo? It was on the official Holochain YouTube channel.
I'm not sure which demo you're talking about.
I think it was a bit older. Maybe it was 5 or 7 years old, so it's a bit overcome.
Yeah. Well, let me explain a little bit about this login notion that I spoke of. So, what this does is it gets right to the heart of what I was saying at the very end of this talk as well, that there are different patterns that show up. So a login is when you get access to a central server where data is stored, and the intermediary recognizes who you are. There's a different pattern of when you type in your password to your phone. That is not login of the kind that I was talking about. That's kind of like having a key to your own house rather than having a key that's issued to you by a hotel owner. So it is definitely the case that there are steps you need to take to create security and to manage the keys, the identity. And what you probably saw in that demo was examples of how that happens. And that's part of what I was talking about, the shift, right? It's not that dealing with security goes away. What goes away is the fact that that security is held. So before, when you wanted to have a brochure for your company and you wanted to publish a brochure for your company, how did you pay? Well, you would go to a printing press company and you would pay them to print out the brochures. You had to pay them because they had the infrastructure. and you had to pay for that brochure to be mailed and distributed around the world, right? So there was an intermediary company you paid to make that happen. And how does that happen now? Well, almost every company in the world now creates their own website. And there's no more payment for that. It's just a cost of doing business. You put it on your website, and then anybody can pull down the latest brochure that you had. You put out a new product, you just put it on your website, and it's another thing. You don't keep paying for every published act of publishing. So the structure of payment changes, and a whole new economy arises out of this change in capacity. And so part of the answer to your question is, well, I actually don't know. I don't know how all of the different types of payment are going to happen when we really shift these capacities away from being intermediated. There'll be new things. The current method for doing this is advertising, right? People pay a lot by advertising, but that has a bunch of these negative consequences. And so I'm hoping that we as a society will discover different ways of creating value transfer and accounting for creating these kinds of spaces once the technical capacity for it to be held in common on the infrastructure we hold together lands. I hope that is helpful in seeing it. It's not a trivial question. You're asking an important question, and there's a lot of complicated answers to it, how this will develop for us. Any other questions?
Great. Okay.
Yeah, so I welcome Alistair on from Holohost, and so we would like to introduce the Volla Cloud powered by Holochain as an ecosystem to build compelling apps and solutions. And doing that, tomorrow we have a presentation of Dark Soil. They show and demonstrate a developer kit, so you can create that apps. And if you create that apps, you can also use Holohost to give your apps further features. And so therefore, I'm very happy that you are presenting and offer more options for people who would like to use that opportunity of a Volla Cloud for their apps. Thank you very much for coming.
Thanks, I'm glad to be here. Hi. So yeah, as Dr. Vertzer said, my name is, well, it was Alistair Ong, but I think there was an autocorrect in the itinerary, and oh, hang on.
No, maybe the camera. His camera. Yeah, this is.
Yeah, I think it's just no. I think it just logged out.
Otherwise, you can. Yeah.
Share entire screen.
And
I will just
do some settings.
I do settings to not. Screen.
Yeah, next time we will have a service provider for broadcasting. The more people buy one of us, we can afford this.
Great. So yeah, as I was saying, my name is Jaden Wan, or Alistair Ong. I'm Director of Product for Holo Hosting. And I'll be talking to you today about distributed storage and forwarding for your cloud applications running on a community infrastructure, which is a wordy way of saying what Dr. Vertzer said so eloquently, which is how do you provide additional features to Holochain-based applications running on Volla Cloud. Oh, great, thank you. Yeah, I think that microphone was turned on as well. Okay. No, I have the microphone turned on now. Okay, so I think Eric set some context here, but as a recap and for anyone who missed it and who just joined, Holo Hosting is a subsidiary of the Holochain Foundation. We are fully owned, and our mission is to help Holochain applications work everywhere by providing optional cloud infrastructure that extends peer networks. What that means is, we're part of the Holochain Foundation. We believe that peer-to-peer applications are the best solution. They are the future, and nothing's absolute. So sometimes there are situations where you want, you need cloud services to provide the best experience for your users. And how do we do that without going back to big tech? Well, Holo Hosting provides community-owned cloud hosting infrastructure. As Eric said earlier, we have a network of peer nodes, holoports, that can host workloads and are geared towards hosting Holochain workloads specifically. The network is built around the principles of decentralized resilience and especially digital autonomy. As the Ubuntu Touch guy said earlier, freedom requires choice, and we spend as much time thinking about how can you offboard from our services as how can you onboard into our services. All right. So we have 2 services currently, and we have more that we're building out right now. What we build, of course, depends on user feedback and user requests. But the first 2 out there, based on our own experiences and early customer feedback of what are needed, are what we call cloud nodes and the web bridge. So cloud nodes are very simply always on Holochain nodes for consistent availability, validation, and connectivity. You might need them, for example, if you have a sparse network and users aren't always online at the same time to pass messages in between each other. So then you can have a node that effectively acts as a relay. You might need them if you have specific requirements around the security of your data. That means that you want specific validators or specific numbers of validators or specific geographies for validators, or you're concerned that there is a certain level of concentration within the network that you want to counterbalance. And you might just need them because you want more nodes for data resiliency. The web bridge is a really simple HTTP-based read-only way to access data on a DHT. Holochain data, the Holochain network functions in some ways as a decentralized database, and if you are not running a Holochain node for that particular application, then you don't have ready access to that data. So if you would like to get your data into the hands of an audience who don't want to or can't run a Holochain node, then we can provide a web bridge for that. It's HTTP, so it's super flexible, right? Like pretty much anything can call that nowadays. All right. Now, I have a short demo, if the demo gods are willing, which, given today's track record for me particularly, I'm not so sure about, but let's try that. That's why. Wait, yes. Oh, that's why. Let's see. Is that working? Wait, why is that not working? That's not good. Well, it's supposed to screen share my phone. And it was screen sharing my phone earlier. So what's happening there? Hang on. Let me unplug and plug back in. I'm going to turn my phone off and turn it back on. Wait, how do I? Demo gods aren't doing so well today.
Next time, just use 2.0.
Okay.
Y and C?
So maybe I should get a Volla phone, then this won't happen. Wait, it's not turned.
Would you like to use Y and C?
What's Y and Z?
Or another, how to mirror the device?
Oh, well, I was using this and I was testing earlier. Ah, there we go. What do you know? So I'm going to share this screen. And which window? All right. So that's my phone, and I've got an app installed, Can-Do, which is a simple Holochain Kanban board. So if I open it here, it will take way too long to load. There we go. So, all right, so got a Kanban board, and it's empty right now. So I'm going to create a few columns. So oops, doing, and done. And I'm going to say, okay, so to do what? X. How do I? Doing. And sausages. Sorry, this is a more British breakfast than the German one, isn't it? All right, so great. So now I've got a Kanban board, so I can publish a cloud node, which is not a very exciting demo. Let's hope it goes green. But what it means is that if I then turn off my phone, or if I'm online or something, or offline or on an airplane, then if someone else goes and joins this Kanban board, they can receive, they can still receive the data, right? So in this case, it's helping to deal with a sparse network. That is taking a little long. Damn, we got 3, don't like me. Let's wait. Yo, what do you know? It works. So this one isn't particularly exciting, but the other one, publishing a board, as I said, if you have your data in Holochain requires someone to run a Holochain node to access it. So we can provide infrastructure that runs that node, runs a simple bridge, and allows you to access it via the web. So I'm going to publish that. And in this case, I've got this Kanban board, and I want to give someone access, read-only access, so they can just check the status, make sure that I'm cooking breakfast correctly and at the right pace, and so on. So now I'm publishing that so that they can monitor that I am not slacking, assuming, again, it publishes. Wait, that's not even spinning anymore. Uh-oh. Spinning here. Now it looks like it's frozen, which is not great. Hang on. Let me reshare that. Oh yeah, it crashed. Well,
Mirroring crashed?
Yeah, the mirroring crashed. Or something with the cable, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe you show it in your camera, what is happening?
Oh yeah, I can do that. So your camera, so now that's published. Sorry, let me, so now I'm just opening that on the web, and it's pulling the data from DHT and then displaying that, hopefully people can see, displaying that on my web view. So that allows anyone who wants to know that I'm actually cooking something to check up on me. All right. So, oh no, share screen again. All right. Wow, so somehow that managed to work, which is great. So that's the demo. You may be wondering how the authentication, the payments, and all that stuff works, because I didn't show that, and I'm not showing the code right now. But it's pretty simple. So the current API that we have is a standard API where you get an API key, get your access token, request deployment. That API key is linked to your account, and you get the bill for it. So you, as the application owner or developer, needs to own the user relationship, and it is up to you to decide how you want to charge your user base, how you want to monetize these features. However, we know, of course, that that there are application owners who don't want to be in that sort of relationship where they are a middle person. We are looking into and want to build a different pathway for authentication and payment, which allows end users to form a direct relationship with Holo, so that you, as the application owner, don't have to be that person that is essentially that centralized intermediary. That functionality is still in development. Big challenge, of course, with this is the user experience, the friction, right? Because we don't want a situation where every time a user wants to deploy a new feature, they have to go and sign up and log in and do all that sort of stuff. So if that's of interest to you, then we would really love your input as we build and test and think up of different ways to make that happen. Okay, so it's only 2 services right now, but they enable a range of functionality, right? So as I mentioned earlier, so they enable DHT resiliency, DHTs being the Holochain distributed data layer. So using cloud nodes, you can ensure that you have the number of replications of data that you want in the places that you want them. They enable a diverse validator set, as I mentioned earlier. There are situations where, to step back a bit, Holochain, amongst other things, is a verifiable data layer, which allows you to program rules for data validation and ensure that people follow them, because you have peer validation that ensures that all participants in the network are following the rules of that network. And in such a situation, you may be concerned with who are the validators. They might be too concentrated in a particular region. You might be suspicious that they all know each other. You might just want more validators, and Holo can help you with that. As I mentioned, as I showed in the demo, content publishing is an obvious use case, right? If you want, with Holochain, you can build collaborative applications. And if you build, for example, collaborative work applications, you might want to publish that data, right? So for example, if you have a collaborative blog, it enables asynchronicity. So that just means that you're not on at the same time, which I think I've spoken enough about. Enables social sharing. So often you want to share links of contents to other people. So if you've got a Volla phone, you've got Volla Messenger, you've got content on there or referencing another Holochain application, and you're sending it to someone who doesn't have Holochain, this might be a way of doing that. And finally, you might want to do some sort of polling and automation, especially in an IoT context, on Holochain data. So if you've got devices regularly publishing regularly committing information to your Holochain-based application network, then you can, and you want to respond to that without running a node. So for example, if it's an IoT device that doesn't have the capacity to run a full node, then this might be a solution for you as well. All right. So getting started right now, the best way would be to contact me. My email is there. Please don't dox me. For early access, we have self-service tools that we are building and should be released by the end of the month. Coming next, so when I published that very basic Kanban board, which shows the extent of my front-end skills, I was publishing the data. The UI itself was hosted on Cloudflare, and we don't currently do UI hosting, but that is something that we are building for, again, around the end of this month, because it's just such a common request, right? Like, we have a Holochain application, we'd love to host it. We also have a front end, can we host that too? And then beyond that, we are looking into, for example, authority nodes, which are nodes that have certain special privileges or certain special roles within Holochain. Holochain applications allow that, and some applications use patterns where you want authority nodes. And in such a case, we want to be able to offer people an easy path to just spin those up. And finally, we're looking at data storage options as well. But really, all of this depends on what you, the community, want to do with it. So as you build applications on Volla Cloud and Holochain, then if you find use cases where you want to use Holo hosting, or that aren't met with Holo hosting but you think require cloud, please let us know, and we can work with you to understand more about how we might be able to help. Because fundamentally, we want to build what will help to accelerate the Volla Cloud ecosystem. Great.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation. And I think it's a good inspiration to make compelling apps that needs data availability and features, and therefore it's perfect to integrate your service. And maybe we also offer that option for the recovery app. That makes sense. And tomorrow I recommend the demo and presentation and kind of hands-on for the development kit for these apps. Does anyone has some questions? Okay.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. Very insightful. One question I had is, so in the Volla messages, you can supposedly, obviously, send a message from one person to another, send a file from one person to another.
Yeah.
And you said it's asynchronous, so I guess that means that if one person is offline, and then that file is sent, and then the first person that actually sent it also goes offline, that file is still, maybe the Volla node, the cloud node is holding that, right? Until then the other person comes online and that's delivered. Is that right?
Yeah.
And does that have a HOT token cost, or is that just free of charge? Or, for example, that's fine for a small image, but what about when talking about a backup? What about 2 terabytes worth of backup storage? Who is paying for that intermediary holding that data in the middle there?
It would have so fundamentally the answer to the question is yes, there would be a cost. We currently accept HOTs, hot, or traditional currencies with differences in price between that to encourage hot. We haven't gotten to the point of 2 terabytes of data on a single network, so it isn't something where we've really thought that much about the pricing model and so on. But just off the top of my head, we would probably recommend anyway that at that sort of size of network data that you deal with, that you look into sharding the DHT. in which case you'd just be running multiple nodes to make sure you have the right number of replications.
And my follow-up question then would be, can any organization or person spin up a cloud node on their Raspberry Pi or their laptop or on their cloud server VPS and just be part of that network and help contribute and also get some of the I guess reward of that?
So if you're running a Holochain application network node, then or if you're participating in that and you want to spin up another node, then there's nothing that stops you from doing so. You're just running that node yourself, so it only costs whatever the cost was to set that network. That is different to providing nodes as a service for payment. To do that, you need to run software and connect to our network. Right now, that software only runs on, well, it's only on ports. It's standard Linux and so on, so we can't port it over so that you can run it on any device. It just hasn't been a priority for us to do that. But it's certainly something that we do want to do at some point, right? To make that ecosystem fully open and allow anyone to contribute.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, and for Volla.
Yes, a question.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much for your speech. I got a question. What is the difference between a DHT and the DLT? So is it a kind of a distributed ledger? And if so, how do you plan to decentralize it? Because right now what I saw, it's centralized.
So a DHT is a decentralized hash table.
Yes.
So I guess the fundamental difference between that and a ledger is the DHT itself has no particular order. It's just a hash table of data. Holochain does construct orders and so on, ordering of operations, but that's a whole separate thing. Holochain itself is distributed, right? The DHT, right, which is by name, fully distributed. And if you just go and run Holochain application nodes, you'll just be participating in that network, gossiping, holding part of all of the data, right? That is completely open, and it doesn't require you to use Volla hosting. And this goes back to the onboarding and offboarding. There's nothing that requires you to use Volla hosting for always on nodes. You could just build a node or buy a node or whatever. You just run yourself to provide infrastructure for your application. We're just offering a service to make it easy if you don't want to go and do that. So, and conversely, offboarding, if you're running a cloud node and you want to offboard, like our service, or you want to take control or whatever, all you have to do is spin up some Holochain application instances. The data will just naturally gossip, and then we just shut down the Holochain nodes as well. So I hope that answers the point about the data layer itself being distributed. As for
But the validation, I'm sorry. So how do you validate the transaction without being centralized?
how do you validate the transaction?
Yeah, you have to validate it somehow. So the question is how you do it if it isn't a centralized entity. And right now it isn't a centralized entity, and I'm asking, how do you envision to do it decentralized? Because there are a lot of distributed ledger which didn't make it. I know a lot of projects who tried to get to the decentralized status and didn't make it. And they have a bigger market cap than Holochain as well. So I'm just asking, how do you plan to transition to a decentralized model?
So I think, so I want to be clear. The fact that we offer validation services doesn't mean that validation is centralized, because the way Holochain works is that every peer can validate. Not every peer validates each other, but peers validate data that they are the authority for. So I don't want to butcher Holochain technicalities too much, because I'm not the Holochain engineer.
I see.
But very roughly, you have the DHT, so just think of it as a big data table, and and every peer is responsible for validating a part of that, like a range of that table. And there's overlapping parts, so each entry ends up with multiple peers validating it. And the service that we're offering isn't that you need centralized validators. It's that you might have a concern that, let's say an EU application, right, for some reason, all right, and you need it to be validated, to have validated nodes, right, in all 27 EU member states, but you don't actually have that on the network. So you could basically pay to spin up additional nodes to ensure that happens. But fundamentally, they are still pure nodes. They do not have any elevated authority over any other nodes. So the validation is not centralized.
All right. Thank you.
Darf ich weitermachen?
Ja, nur mal, ja.
Also nicht zu der direkt.
Yeah, well, just to comment, and then I bring you the microphone. I would just make clear that we need to distinguish between the Volla Cloud and the service of Holohost. I think your service is you have a cloud of Holo ports, or this is a piece of hardware, and everyone who runs that hardware confirms that on the hardware is some piece of data of someone who is using the Holohost service. The Volla Cloud is different. So for each use case, as I said, if I have a one-to-one chat or a chat between three persons, a separate DHD table is created, and the data is only exchanged between the parties who are communicating with each other. If you are one-to-one chat, you can for sure decide to add your PC at home that is always online as another participant in that chat to ensure that someone else reads your messages if you are offline with your smartphone. And in addition, the idea is if you create Volla Cloud apps that makes use of the ecosystem and the core service of the Volla OS, you can say as a developer, I would like to make it maybe even more convenient. Instead that people add their own PC or own server to a group, a chat, or whatever the use case is. I would offer a Holohost service as an option that the data there is distributed if I'm offline. So this is the whole game. So it's an additional offer if, as a developer, you develop a Volla Cloud app for. So this is, so just to make clear that there's different approaches that you can combine. And now I will give you.
Thank you. What is your opinion about other decentralized services? Because you are developing decentralized services on base of Holochain, but there are great efforts for decentralized services that other people are doing. I mean, Fediverse, ActivityPub. They also have messaging and image boards and whatever created. So maybe you can share your opinion to this.
Not sure I want to comment about that. I mean, Fediverse is right. I think they occupy different spaces. Holochain, so as I said earlier, a big part of Holochain is about the verifiable data layer. There are inbuilt mechanisms to ensure data provenance, that we know that the data we see is tamper-proof and can trace to the public key author of that. So that lends itself to certain applications. I think we have built a new prototype Holochain-based social media. Personally, and this is just me, very personally talking about that, social media is something where you say a lot of stuff and doesn't necessarily have too much cost to that stuff. it's one where historically there hasn't needed to be, in my view, verifiable data. But nowadays, with AI and deepfakes and so on, it might be an area where you want that provenance, right? Where you want to be able to understand where did this data actually come from.
Okay. Someone, one more question? Sure, you're welcome.
Hi, thank you. I was wondering, how is the adoption? Are people already using it? At what scale? How do they like it? Can you share something about that?
I mean, I can only talk about the adoption of Holla hosting specifically, but that is dependent on Holochain. I would honestly, we're still pretty nascent. Holochain itself has been in various stages of alpha and beta, so we're now at the point where I think we can start to see more widespread usage, right? Hopefully with the new version of Volla messages and Holochain 0.5, we'll see some amazing improvements.
Okay. Mr. Harris Brown is also in the chat, and maybe he would like to answer the last question, I think. Let me try.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
It sounds like there's a little bit of echo, but in any case, the question that I wanted to answer was the question about validation and distributed hash tables, and also the question about other distributed platforms and projects that are in play. I think, Alistair, you did a great job of answering that, but I wanted to just go a little further. Holochain is fully validated at the distributed layer. It is not centrally validated, and that is exactly what I was speaking to about in the portion of the talk that I gave, is that the protocol creates shared data in a distributed context that is validated, and only the data that is validated is published. And so that is actually exactly what Holochain has solved. It has solved that problem of decentralizing validation. In terms of other projects, I love all of the other distributed projects that are out there. We are a longtime participant in DWeb Camp, that is a place where people have come together across the world to talk about distributed solutions. And so I've met with Andreas from Peter Panda and many of these other folks who are doing the people out of Noster and out of the Fediverse. I think the question, or the way that Alistair put it, is that there are a bunch of different types of problems that are being solved by people in the distributed world. And the thing that Holochain does in specific that is different from other solutions is that we focus on this notion of a social engagement space, where the rules of the game are part of what is encoded into every distributed hash table that's created, every Holochain network. And that notion of having a separate network space where the rules that the group that wants to engage in that is a native deep layer concern of Holochain and is part of what's built into the protocol, I think is a distinguishing feature of Holochain. And so I just wanted to point to that particular part of it. But I love all of the other projects, and I'll be going to another DWeb seminar that's happening this year, and to talk about how we can use different components. Like we may indeed be using lower level components for transport layer that other P2P solutions are putting in, and we're hoping that other people use our upper layer Holochain protocols for creating these engagement spaces. And so I think that there's a lot of room for the different types of spaces that to work and share their strong points. So that's what I would offer. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for this explanation. And Mr. Ong, thank you very much for being here. You have the chance to talk with him informal after and or beside the conference. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah, from your own network, you are the official retailer for Threefold Network, And to simplify it maybe to oversimplify it, I would say what we are doing with Volla Cloud in a small scale for consumers, Threefold is doing it in a large scale, even infrastructure for whole countries, a distributed, resilient infrastructure. And so maybe you will explain for sure much better what you are doing. And I don't want to give spoiler alarm what is coming. So maybe you can join.
First.
Hmm?
The passwords.
Great. I mean, I want to start first. Great to see all what I would call friends now. I mean, it's great to see all these parties, all in the same direction, all the same minds, like mind. In the schedule, you'll probably see that Wijnand is going to talk first, but I'm going to do a little introduction, and you'll understand in a minute why. I want to introduce you to the own phone. And the first question that I would like to discuss with you today is who really owns your data. We've already talked about a lot in different parties here, but I want to concentrate on who do we think owns our data. Now, there's a lot of privacy companies out there. I don't know if you noticed, but there's a lot of businesses out there that are privacy focused. So in the Netherlands, we have some companies that actually have the word privacy in it. So what I feel they are doing is they are trying to build applications or tools or phones or laptops to try and get privacy, to basically shield us from the world out there. So we feel that privacy is not a goal, privacy is a result. So if we take on the basics of the problem, then privacy becomes a result. So one of the phrases that we say, 99% privacy is the same as 0% privacy. You either have it or you don't have it. There's no like, I have a lot of privacy. No, you have it or you don't have it. So how do we achieve that? We already mentioned it a few times today during the presentations. We saw that today's internet, what we're talking about, is a centralized system. If I give presentations to a regular audience like my mother, I have to go really into detail and show it in Sesame Street language. I've heard the guys, the presentations, and see you today. I don't have to go. I can go into more technical details without doing it. You guys know what I'm talking about. So today's internet is centralized. So that means it's environment unfriendly. We build these huge data centers and data farms, everywhere in the world, consume a lot of energy, a lot of power. So it's incredibly inefficient and environmental unfriendly. And the second one is unsafe. We all understand if you store your data in a central location, you can see what happens in Ukraine. You just bomb a data center and you lose most of your capacity. Hackers obviously have an interest of doing the most damage in the system where most data is collected. So the current system is unsafe. And it's also highly inefficient. And I know that Wijnand is going to show you a little bit more about it, but if you look in the whole world, everybody is supposed to be able to use the internet. That's what we feel, that's what Threefold feels, and everybody should have access to the internet. But a lot of the world doesn't have that access. Which means if you're, for instance, in Africa, where I travel a lot to, and I tell these people, you don't have any internet, they take a mobile phone and say, oh yeah, I do, it says 3G or 4G, so I have internet. So no, you have access to the internet. But where your actual data is, where your Office 365 is, or your Zoom meetings or whatever, it's all somewhere central in one of these large data centers. And if you see where that signal travels to, it goes down, up and down to Europe or so, thousands of kilometers. So it's an incredibly inefficient system that we currently have. Then, of course, it's incredibly expensive too, and especially for those countries. And they have to pay for they already have bad infrastructure for energy. The signal has to travel all over the world, so it's incredibly expensive and inefficient internet. And last but not least, there's hardly any privacy. Everywhere, we are here with Volla now, so you all understand. But I tell people, if you have an Apple phone or an Android phone, you have to log in to use your phone. You have to actually have an account to use your phone. That doesn't make any sense. You need accounts. So it's all to be able to connect your profile to it, because that data is worth a lot of money. So much that companies like Samsung can actually offer their phone for $150 cheaper than they're supposed to, simply because the data they're sharing from you is worth a lot of money. So when people come to us and say, well, that phone is not the cheapest one, it's hard to compete with those. But people pay with your privacy, you pay with your freedom. So we actually feel, like I think most of you here, that the future is decentralized. That's all we hear, right? So if you have a decentralized, internet, it becomes much more eco-friendly because you can store your data in a local way. And the reason why I became into the scene of threefold was I was looking for how do we go back to local in different subjects. Why do my apples have to come from Australia? We have apples here too. So in food and everything, but also in data storage, why doesn't it have to happen? Why doesn't it have to happen on the other side of the world? So if you can do that local in the local decentralized system, it becomes more eco-friendly, it becomes safer because your data can now be spread out over multiple nodes, as we call them now, that are at home in your utility room, in your office. There's thousands, millions will there be. So there's not a centralized place anymore that you can destroy or that you can hack because your data is now spread out all over decentralized internet. So it's much more safe, much more efficient therefore. I don't think I have to explain that, but obviously it's a much more efficient system. Therefore, the costs are much lower because if we can all participate and all own a little bit of that, our internet, that internet doesn't belong to Google, Apple, Meta, Amazon, and Microsoft. No, it belongs to, it's supposed to belong to us. So if we can physically have a piece of internet capacity and have that stored in our home, and basically as a provider, basically provide it to the whole world and say, you can use my storage too. And by doing so, you actually earn. You earn in the form of tokens. You can use those tokens also to higher capacity on that same internet, which is very cost efficient, but lower the cost. And it's more private, of course. If I'm in control of where I store my data and nobody else can access it, that's as private as it's going to get. So now, the next question is the reason we're going to introduce Mr. Reinhard Kuipers to you now. We'll go to the next slide. Is you think that this is new? Well, it's not new, and that's why I'm so happy today to introduce Reinhard. Can you say something so we can hear you?
Yes. Hello. Cool. Good afternoon.
I'm going to sit down.
Okay. I was ready to share it from my side, but I think this is easier, and I'll use actually your finger to push the presentation forward. Good afternoon. My name is Wijnand, very Dutch, born and raised there a long time ago, and currently operate, work, and live in the Middle East. As it is such a new environment in terms of technology and technology building, we decided to set up the former companies for Threefold and other startups here in the Middle East. So if you go to the next slide, it will be a little bit going through memory lane for all of us. The problem has been, I think, stated very well, but I'll take a slightly different angle to get to it. When I started using the internet, it wasn't this long ago, but it was long ago, where you could more or less draw a map in terms of the locations that you were using. And again, I started my work career as a rocket scientist, believe it or not. And I worked for ESA in Europe, and I was working with NASA engineers every day. And we literally shared results and data from a desktop computer to a desktop computer on the other side of the world. I mean, that was the internet. And the internet's name still says it's a network. It doesn't speak as much as what we do today. And that's the next slide, please, that it's all about content and data. Next one, Robert. And content and data has taken over. This networking part, everybody forgets. We don't even think about it anymore because it always works and we have it everywhere, where if we are at home or if we are at work or even on the way, we have it, right? What is king today is content. And this is a very old map, but it still exists. And there's still hopefully someone that updates it that keeps track of what are the biggest domain names and names out there. And again, this is focused on the US part, which is that part. I'm colorblind, so I think it's gray, but it might be something completely else. But that part in the middle and the names we know, right? But it's also now coming up and growing really, really fast. Let's say the Chinese part, which I believe is on the left side at the bottom. And it's all about content, all about data. That means that if I go back in time, that whole principle of working with scientists on the other side of the world, which was my first interaction with the internet, the data was with people and you were sharing it if and when you wanted to share it with that other scientist. Today, we cannot even share unless you download a specific application data without having an intermediary, which means convenience, very, very true, But that's not what this was all about. Next slide, please. Because what it has done, and this is fortunate for parts of the world, but very unfortunate for other parts of the world, is that it has centralized infrastructure. Infrastructure is hard to deal with, is very expensive, and takes and needs a lot of power and manpower or knowledge. And that means that it can only exist in places where all of those ingredients are available. And if you look at this map, and we started the journey at Threefold almost a decade ago, so this is a bit dated. I'm sure there's more dots now and there's more data centers around, and it might be a little bit more decentralized than what it is presented here. But it exists in places where there is a lot of capital, a lot of electricity, a lot of power availability, and a lot of knowledge. And that's it. And then you can already see, which was also alluded to by Robert Jan earlier, that there's big gaps in there. There's people that actually need to travel thousands and thousands and thousands of kilometers virtually, but in order to get a service, or in order to store their photo, or in order to actually communicate with each other. And that's just not right. And that's where Threefold found its inspiration, and what is also the motivation to continue to do, because this model is only accelerating. If we think about what is happening today with AI and those services that we have, we're now talking no longer about kilowatts per data center rack. We're talking about megawatts per data center rack that we need in order to power all those GPUs, which means that this problem is only accelerating and only getting more. And that's, again, like I said, in our book for the people at Threefold, just not right. Next slide, please. We believe, this is an example of where, as Robert Jan also said earlier, we are operating and we have now presence in Africa, and we're working with African governments to actually convince them not to take Chinese who will come over, build data centers and operate data centers for these countries. We're thinking that that is the wrong way of doing it. They can also get big contracts from Americans that if and when there is power available, then they can build data centers in those local countries. What we've said and what we're talking about to them is, why don't you build your own, but do it in such a way that you don't need megawatts for a site, but you might need kilowatts for a site, or you might even need less than that. And there are places in those countries which have availability of kilowatts or reliable kilowatts of power in government buildings, in universities, in schools, in municipal centers, in corporations for agricultural trade. I mean, they are there, but they're not necessarily data centers as we know them. So for an individual, and this is done in Zanzibar, because we're working with Tanzania and Zanzibar predominantly today, they need to travel, if they're using a facility like we're doing today, for me to talk to you, they go to Europe. They travel thousands of kilometers to have a conversation which happens on the same island, which is just a silly and inefficient way of actually doing it. Next slide, please. So we touched upon it already, but just to summarize, so there's 3 billion people at least that don't have direct access to innovation, local facilities, local storage, local compute facilities. They don't. The centralized infrastructure does raise questions, and we see in Europe already now situations where a US president decides that they are no longer friends with the International Court of Justice, if I have the right name, in The Hague, and they just shut down Microsoft accounts, because that's what they need to do if and when the president says do it at Microsoft, which is silly. I mean, it's just impossible to continue. And then the traditional model, I mean, that centralization, the unfortunate bit is, if you put a lot of computers in a small room, which is what a data center is, the heat will compound. And the problem of extracting that heat becomes more complex than if you do it in, let's say, 100 locations where those densities of computers are less. So it is a much more efficient way of doing it. Next slide, please. So we started building, like I said, 10 years ago, approximately, with the vision to, next slide, please, to do exactly what we know very well. Next slide, please, because I think that works better. What we currently see in the electricity and power market, where we do have those centralized components that we need in order to guarantee continuous delivery of electricity in this case. But we are seeing a lot of decentralization happening with, let's say, sustainable ways, solar panels on our roofs, windmills in the backyards that we have, in order to augment. So we're not saying forget centralized and only do decentralized, but we believe that decentralized is a very good way forward to, A, get all of the black spots that exist today, all of the spots where it isn't possible to do, all of the people that believe that they don't want to have that data in centralized data centers and in other countries residing. That's what we believe that we can add. Where are we today on the next slide? We have approximately infrastructure, and again, this is not owned by us, but this is owned by people. This is owned by organizations. This is owned by countries, where we have people deploying hardware. They're using the software stack that we have built to build a decentralized cloud. There's over 20 petabyte of storage amongst over all of those devices. There's about 2,000 nodes online, and we have about 40,000 CPU cores. Now that's a drip on, that's a drip in an ocean. That's a drip on a hot plate in what is available out there in let's say the centralized version of it. But it's not zero either, and we're building gradually and securely use cases of it, which Robert-Jan will tell a little bit more about later. And people are starting to trust that this can be done from the homes and can be done from universities. The biggest thing and the biggest problem that we have at Threefold is to convince, not people in general, public and friends, if I may call you that, although most of you I don't know, that already believe that this is the future. But go to a traditional organization, go to a traditional company and try to convince them that Azure or Google is not the way to go, but go for something that is decentralized, which you might rent from the next city, or you might even deploy back in your own utility room that you might have, is very much not done today. And it makes me feel a little bit like I was a very early adopter of Linux as an operating system very early on in my career. And everywhere where I worked in the early parts of my career, I was frowned upon because that was something that was done by hackers or done by people that were not seriously in let's say, the world of enterprises, and that was not done. We're at that same stage, I think, today, although faith and trust is growing. And by, again, presenting in meetings like this, I hope to help to raise that awareness and make the project known amongst others. Again, this will be about the phone, not too long about this. There is also through Robert-Jan, if you don't want to do it all yourself, it's open source, all of the software, but obviously that's not for everyone. So Robert-Jan has built and has kindly built a model where you can just purchase a device, which comes and arrives in your home, and it's plug and play. You put power into it, you plug it into the network that you have. It will do all of it needs to do, because again, we don't install the operating system. Why not, would you ask? Because installing an operating system actually makes you need to maintain an operating system, which makes you, as the owner of the device, able to have access to the device and all of the data that sits on it. And from a principle, we believe that that was not the way to go. Also, again, I said you need a lot of manpower to run these data centers. That would put knowledge and capabilities as a requirement in the people that will do this. Again, go to Africa, you won't find many of them because they will all have traveled and migrated already to Europe and the US to work in those data centers. But anyway, so it's available, not to dwell too much on that. Next slide, please. These are the four components that make it. So it's a decentralized OS, meaning it's not installed. It boots it up when you turn the device on. It will always get the latest version. Most of, except the kernel, is modularized, which means that it can be updated without rebooting the device, which means that some of those devices that are out there are up for more than a year. We've got two types of quantum safe storage and network, because we believe that that is the way to go. Again, there's lots to be told about that, but not for here. And then it is definitely an AI and edge platform, because today we also support GPUs and GPUs to be part of this cloud model that can be built by people for people. Next slide, please. Use cases that we support today, well, anything that is Web 2 or Web 3, any blockchain that we can run on it, because in the end, it's a very low level and a high and a deep tech build that runs at this point in time virtual machines, just like any other cloud. And it has networking between all of those devices, which means you can literally run any application that's out there that runs on Linux today. That's, I think, my last slide. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. And Robert, please take it forward.
There's a few guys over here from Beach Hut, sorry guys and girls, that are very much interested in mycelium, so we need to connect.
Very much, definitely will do, and share my contact details, please.
Yeah, I will do that, okay. So, yeah, are you going to hang around right until the end, so we do a Q&A in the end?
Yeah, Q&A I'll wait for. Okay. I'm not sure about the rest of the day, because I'm 2 hours ahead of you.
That's for sure. If someone has some questions right now, you can ask. Okay, there we have a question.
Use this microphone?
Yeah, maybe best way.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. My question is, I have actually two questions, but the first one is, have you achieved cost parity with the data centers, or is it 10%, 20%, 30%, 50% more expensive?
It's less expensive.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And that's really incredible. And then my next question after that is, you mentioned quantum safe. Are you using one of the NIST PQC algorithms, or is it something else?
It's something else, but we're looking into using those obviously algorithms that are coming out right now, because we're not wanting to reinvent the wheel all by ourselves. This is deep tech. We build it from the ground up. If there's very good components that we can include, then we will.
Well, looking forward to hosting our services on this new decentralized network. Thank you.
Looking forward to it.
Any more questions at this point? Yeah.
Hello. You talked about decentralized OS, Zero OS. How do you mean that? Is it in the term of distributed OS?
No. Good question. Thank you so much for it. The word might be a little bit confusing, or it might be a little bit, yeah. In the end, it's a Linux kernel which gets downloaded when you turn the device on. The device has a PXE boot method where it can find the kernel and all of the necessary software later on. So it downloads that, and then we took time to make sure that we can download what is needed and what needs to be run. Like I said, modules in a safe way, so there's hashing involved, and it gets checked whether or not it is what it needs. And then we just run it. So it is an OS like any other OS. It's just not locally accessible. You cannot do anything with the keyboard. It doesn't have an interface locally. It only listens, let's say, to a blockchain where a smart contract tells it, start a VM, and in the VM run XYZ as software. So no local access, no admin access, not by us, not by the owner of the device, all done by smart contracts and change.
Thank you.
Okay, no more questions. Then I'm going to continue my story. Thanks again, Wijnand.
My pleasure.
So now I want to introduce our company. I'm here with my partner Ed. Our company is called Your Data Network, and it's in the name. We want it to be your data. Most companies make a business and a living out of collecting your data and storing it for you. We want your data to be yours. So now during in the search, no, I have to go back. About 3 years ago, we became a certified partner for Threefold, which means we are building those nodes, designing the nodes, selling them. During the first few years, there was an ID within Threefold that we also need a mobile phone. Everybody has a mobile phone, so we need to come up with a mobile phone that somehow incorporates storage on the decentralized internet. And at the time, there was no budget for it, so they asked the community, like, well, maybe you guys have some ideas. So that's when our search started. Like, we also feel we needed some kind of mobile device to connect, to store my data on this new decentralized internet. So during the search, we were introduced by Arend over there to Volla. We got into touch with this wonderful company and found that there's actually a phone out there that ticked off all the boxes except maybe one or two of our list, but about 80–90%. And go, well, why would we reinvent something and instead of going to Germany, you know, just for me like a 1.5 hour drive, and find a company that has already done most of the work for us and see if we can somehow integrate our IDs in their phone and just make it the phone for the decentralized internet. So that's where the word own phone came from. We want it to be your own phone, your own data, you know. So that's where this funny shirt came from. It's yours, not theirs. So we had a wish list for the phone. The first one is, obviously, it needs to easily connect to the decentralized storage. We just saw the presentation from Wijnand. We honestly believe that this is a really good alternative, maybe not for everything out there, but for a large portion of the internet out there. this new decentralized grid is absolutely working fantastically. And most of the things we're even using, like everyday cloud environment, the clouds on my phone, it's all on this decentralized internet. As a visitor, you don't even notice it there. It's working very well. So we want this new phone to be able to connect to that too, to store its data there, your photos, your apps, your cloud environment, your collaboration software like Office 365, everything you should be able to run on your phone like you do these days. The second one is we wanted to have a unique operating system. There's several really good operating systems out there. There's Graphene OS, there's EOS, there's all sorts of operating systems, but the downside for us at the moment, at that time, was like, we don't really know. Most of it is installed on existing devices. Graphene OS is installed on Google Pixel devices. I don't have anything against it, but I don't know what the device itself does. What does the hardware do below it? So a unique operating system that we control and that we can integrate things like Mycelium into to make sure that everybody has easy access to their data and to this decentralized storage. Then the third one is a no-brainer. I don't want to be able, I don't want to need any accounts. I want to switch on my phone and just start using it. So that's support of Linux. As Wijnand already said, Zero OS and everything we do these days is all based on Linux kernel. So how cool would it be if you had a mobile phone that is slowly moving towards a Linux-based operating system? Well, here we are with Volla offering us a multi-boot and we can experiment with Linux. So that was another box ticked. Then we wanted to have a 100% safe VPN. And that's one of the things that that we changed a little bit compared to we actually used the Quintus as our model. Because with the current technology that we have now, there's actually a fairly new, and you guys probably didn't hear of it yet, but there's a new VPN product out there, patent pending, so it's really unique, which is the first 100% safe VPN. Every VPN product out there, somehow you still go with multiple people through a central point, or if government authorities, anyone wants, they could theoretically put their finger on top of it and still see what you're doing. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about it. We'll have a separate presentation one day because Wijnand is one of the developers of this. But they came up with an app called Skipper. Look it up, Skipper VPN. And it uses an AI agent to make a unique connection just for you. And then it what do you call it? It destroys itself. So there's no human interaction. There's no one that's able to tell you where you are, where you made a connection to, so we wanted to have that on the phone as well, to make it as private as we can. Plus, we wanted to have a 100% unique model, preferably built in the EU. Here we are in Germany, one of the countries with that is known for their quality and also known for their privacy-minded people. Because most of the operating systems I just said are rebuilt Samsung phones and rebuilt existing phones, we wanted to have a unique model. Last but not least, environmentally friendly. You all know the phones from Volla, so I don't have to tell you too much about it. The good thing about using the decentralized storage is that it's also way more efficient, and so it really fits into this environmental friendly idea of Volla too. So introducing to you, and that's what we've done to people just a few weeks ago. At the end of May, I think we started the pre-sales of what we call the own phone. I guess you recognize that picture with a different color. We used a Quintus as the model and just asked Volla to make some changes to make sure that it adapts the decentralized storage a little bit more easier. Plus, by forking the operating system will now allow us to say, okay, we're now going to get deeper, integrate Mycelium and all these apps that are coming out. So I'm sure this is an ongoing development. This is part of the presentation that we've been giving to people. You probably know most of it, what I'm going to show you now, but we presented this phone 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we showed all the pros of this phone, made in Germany. We called it YOS. I thought it was called OS. Now it doesn't matter. Our own operating system, our fork of Volla OS. It has a dual boot option, so we can start experimenting with Linux. It has Mycelium pre-installed, and Mycelium is this new protocol that we'll talk about a little bit more another time, but it's basically also end-to-end encrypted, and it looks for the shortest route possible. So all the nodes, phones, laptops, everything we sold so far already has this Mycelium protocol inside. So how cool will it be to expand that with technologies like BChat, for instance? It will just make it bigger. It supports mobile device management, you guys know, which for us is very important because now most companies in Europe don't realize if they give their staff an Android phone or an Apple phone, they don't really, how do you say that? They don't follow up to the new GDPR rules in Europe because that phone actually stores data in a place where we just said we don't want to store it. So, you know, it's a big advantage. We obviously make use of the distraction-free theme, which I think is really great and is in the news. I don't know about Germany, but in the Netherlands, it's in the news a lot now that children are spending way too much time on their mobile phone, and it's bad for their brains and it's bad. So at least this will help a little bit, you know, to have to not be so distracted by your phone anymore. This is the 100% VPN app I was talking about that we will definitely install and incorporate on that. Decentralized storage to store your data on, and obviously, just like with Volla, you get free future updates. So in short, take back control of your data with Nextcloud. We are big Nextcloud supporters already from the period where it was still own cloud. And we've seen it evolve to what it is today. German company also, a fantastic community. So we decided actually to start offering that for people who find it too technical to deploy themselves on the decentralized internet, because at the moment it's not really one click yet, which is something obviously we're going to work on with our mobile phones, so that will be very soon. But until that time, we just offer it and say, okay, you know what, we will spend the tokens, you pay us in euros, we will install it for you on any node you want, multiple nodes, your own node, if you have one, and start playing around with it. And if a year from now you say, hey, this works really well, but now I want to have everything in control, even my own smart contract, will help you to set it up. So I think this speaks for itself. Everything you expect more without compromise. Yeah, back up your phone automatically, but then on the decentralized storage using Nextcloud, store, view, sync. I don't know, is there anyone that doesn't know what Nextcloud is? No, so I don't have to say too much about it. That's right. So you know what it can do. Sorry? Oh, okay. Environmental, we already mentioned that. If you know the Volla Quintus, then you know all these advantages too, but we use it. We found out that a big part of the customer base that is actually coming to us are people that are very much environmental and recirculation economy, and you know, they really look at that now. So this is the reason why we put it in there, because it is a great advantage of this phone. So here we present the own phone. I'm not going to make too much commercial of it, but we started this pre-order. We are selling it for 660 euro, which I think is a little bit more, but there's obviously a lot of development costs we had to incorporate in them, so it's a little bit higher. We do free shipping, and we offer Nextcloud, what we call Nextcloud Remote, and we call it that way because we remotely install Nextcloud on your node wherever you want it. But really what you want is to do it yourself, but if it's too technical, we'll help you to do that. So for the people, and actually many of them already did that, so when they get their phone and they switch it on, they immediately get the option to say, connect it to my Nextcloud, fill in your own cloud information, and from that moment it stores everything in your own private cloud. So take back control, and I think I'm to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Has someone any questions?
Yes, regarding the Skipper VPN, how do you monetize it, or how do you cover the cost of running it?
Read it yourself. I must.
Can you please go again?
Yeah. I think Robert mentioned here, but the question, it's got a cost as any other VPN currently, and a monthly and annual fee. And in order to promote it through Robert, we gave his channel as a channel a 10% discount on the normal price.
And what's the cost of the VPN? And can you pay by cryptos, or how do you pay it?
Do it through our website, and affiliate will get a discount. He's too expensive.
Okay.
But it's something like, out of the top of my head, frozen. Oh, yeah. I believe it's something like, if you pay yearly price, it's somewhere along like $6-7 a month. No more questions? No? Okay. Any other one? Any questions? No? Oh boy, I did good. Yeah.
So thank you very much. I think you are under our selling price. So maybe you make a good deal to buy an own phone.
That's before VAT, right?
Yeah, and so I'm looking forward how this evolves, that project. I'm pretty sure we are successful together. And if the own phone is part of the threefold network, I think this is really a compelling offer to consumers and business.
Yeah, there's actually more. I don't know if Wijnand's going to talk about it, but within threefold, they have what they call also the nodes are called three nodes. Everywhere you see the number 3 because of the name threefold. And they also have the 3 phone, which is a range of phones they are thinking of. This is the first 3 phone of the 3 phone range. But even threefold is now thinking of coming up with a unique device that you will more likely use next to your phone and only uses something like mycelium to communicate in a very secure way. So
hopefully we can be the partner.
Well, we're talking about that, you know. This. I'm going to give back the microphone. Wijnand, thank you very much for joining all the way from Dubai, by the way. So I'm really happy you did. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much. Mr. Schmorhai, are you online?
Good afternoon, everybody. Hallo.
Hallo, ich grüße Sie ganz herzlich. Schön, dass Sie es geschafft haben, bei uns zu sein. Herr Schmorhai repräsentiert HideMe oder den Dienst HideMe, der bei unseren Volla Phones vorinstalliert ist. Auch hier handelt es sich um ein VPN, darüber haben wir gerade gesprochen. So, HideMe is also a VPN that is pre-installed in Volla OS. When I started the development of Volla OS, I thought it's important that people use a VPN, and not every consumer is aware of that service. And if someone is aware that he or she should use a VPN, then it's a question, which VPN should I use? And so what we do, it's an offering, a suggestion to consumers to have it pre-installed on Volla OS. Thanks to our sponsor, we also created a Ubuntu Touch app for HideMe, so you can also use the VPN easily as a consumer in Ubuntu Touch so you just use your user credentials to be connected with the VPN. So yeah, and I think HideMe is a good choice. Maybe we can just start quite simple. Here we have quite an audience who is familiar with security and privacy, but we have also the audience in YouTube, and not everyone knows what is a VPN and why should I use a VPN. Maybe you can give us a quick introduction.
So first of all, thank you very much for inviting me yet again to Volla Community Days. We are very thrilled to be the partner of Volla for more than several years yet, until now. And the colleagues or your guest before explained the necessity about privacy and everything else, and the needs why to use a VPN has changed throughout the years. I don't want to go now very broad, but in the beginning it was all purely used for accessing private network, therefore we talk private network as an acronym for VPN. But right now it's much broader use to secure and your browsing and your connection in the internet through the VPN. We at HideMe, we are offering VPN for our end users and customers, where people can use a VPN to overcome data collection, as the colleagues before me explained. If you like to use a VPN in your private surrounding, on your mobile phone, today when you access the internet, lots of metadata are created in that process. From you connect, where to connect, how you connect, how long was the connection, what have you accessed, the itself data are not maybe seen because of HTTPS and or other encryption protocols that are right now in place, but the lots of metadata are collected and can be sold. By using a VPN, you are establishing a private tunnel between your device, either it's like your mobile phone or desktop device, through one of high-NIST servers in this case, and this connection is tunneled. Nothing is seen except these connections. And you're going through our servers, then in internet, and accessing third-party services, what you would like to do. In that case, your internet service provider or the VP or wireless network that you are using right now in airport, coffee shop, and so doesn't see anything what you are doing in the internet.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes it also speed up the internet connection if you use VPN. And you also have full access to news sources. They might be blocked in some countries.
Exactly. That's an added benefit. It's not always the case, but some internet service providers are blocking some of services or throttling some of the services because of the way they are using their network, and therefore by using a VPN you are masking your traffic, and therefore sometimes in some cases your speed connection can be faster. And from other side, as you mentioned, you can access content in restricted surroundings. Is that maybe some restricted surrounding in your company, or restricted surrounding if you are in some third country where some services are not available? By using a VPN, you can access information that are not available in that restricted surrounding as it is.
And I was also looking which kind of VPN service I can suggest for the customers. And it was convincing me that HideMe makes something different. It also claims it's log-free. So maybe you can explain what it is, a log-free service, and why can you offer it? Because most service providers need to log what's happening in their data centers.
Exactly. We are marketing our service as log-free service because of three different reasons. We are incorporated in Malaysia. That's the reason why we are incorporated there, because Malaysian laws doesn't force us to collect any data about connections and service that we provide, which is not the case in European countries. Any of the European countries, it's not the case. Secondly, all our infrastructure is memory-based, RAM-based. That means all our servers are running directly from the RAM. In case of shutting down or freezing the servers, there is no possibility to extract data from our servers. And third parties, this is the reason why by design we are not able to collect data, because the system itself is designed in such a way that neither connection data or the data itself are logged on our servers. During the connection, we can for sure say that you are connected to one of our servers, but after you disconnect, nothing is left on the server to look at.
And so far I remember, so one special feature is that for sure everything is encrypted, but the keys are generated for each session. So someone connects to your VPN to avoid that someone is stealing your identity for a man-in-the-middle attack. Is that, this is also some part?
One part is what I mentioned, that our servers are RAM-based. That means when the server boots, it connects to several fine endpoints and download all the necessary information and the system as it is, with all encryption keys for the server itself. That's one part. The second part is we are using special WireGuard. We are using WireGuard as a protocol, one of them, but in the way that we adjust this WireGuard protocol so that the encryption keys for WireGuard sessions are always dynamically generated. That means once you connect with our servers and issue WireGuard connection, the both keys on the server and on the client side will be dynamically generated, and after the connection they will be deleted. This way we are allowing perfect forward security also for WireGuard protocol. Why I'm mentioning now WireGuard protocol in comparison with all other VPN protocols? Because right now on the VPN market, the WireGuard protocol is the one mostly adapted, and it's one of the VPN protocols that are less resource intensive. That means it runs almost on any device.
And you changed it a bit, modified it, extended, and published it as open source, right?
No, we haven't changed the WireGuard protocol itself. What we changed is the backend that communicate between our apps and the server, where dynamic key exchange happens. And secondly, we also developed WireGuard client for our infrastructure, for the Linux, that we open source, and it's on our GitHub, yes.
Yeah. And there's some issue, I think it's a kind of racing game that continuously happens. And I'm not sure whether there's whether you can solve it. As a consumer, if I open some web pages, they block their services if I use it within the VPN. If I try to buy a plane ticket or even some trivial websites, you are not allowed to enter it with VPN. Do you have a solution, or do you think there's an outlook how you can avoid that?
Yes. We have two solutions for that case. One is the split tunnel, where we can decide on the software level which applications are going through the VPN and which are not. That's one thing. And the second thing is that for the more and more services that we know that are blocking VPN, but we would like to have the access, we are using also residential IPs. There are special kind of IPs that we are procuring, and through the residential IPs, such services are not blocked. Like the banks, email providers, also, you mentioned buying a plane ticket. This is quite a good example of why to use VPN. You can try it yourself. Try to buy a plane ticket from Germany to some destination and try to buy the same ticket by using VPN from some third-party country. And you will see the price difference.
So
but for sure, I need to add one more thing. The VPN is not the only thing that provides this. If you are using VPN and you want to, for example, in this case, buy an airplane ticket, for sure you need to go in privacy mode in your web browser. You need to delete your cache. The VPN is not the one-third solution for everything, but it's the part of the solution that can bring you more privacy in the internet. But as you mentioned before, if you are using the VPN and you log to your Google account with your credentials and then go to serve something, then no VPN can help you in that. But if you are privacy oriented and you know what to do and how to do, and this is also the part that we are trying also to educate our customers and users, is that VPN is only a part of the solution. One part is, as for example, Volla Phone has privacy-oriented phone where the Google services are not included, and by using conjunction of those, let's say, services and products, you can definitely increase your privacy on the internet.
Yeah, and also you can choose the country. What is that meaning? What can you do with choosing the country to enter the VPN?
Exactly. We are, when you're using VPN, you need to connect somewhere. And when using hide link, we have, you can choose location where you want to connect. We have 91 different locations in the world where you can connect through our app, through servers. Those servers are located in those countries. And by selecting a country, you are basically exiting through this country to the internet. And by using a VPN, that everybody that talks to you or you are talking to them, websites or so, are seeing that you are coming from this particular country. In some cases, this is good, like the airplane ticket, But in some cases, people only want to have a private tunnel that internet providers or coffee shops doesn't see what they are doing. In this case, it's more intuitive that when you are using a VPN that you are connecting to the country we are coming from. For example, if you are coming from Germany, it's more intuitive that you connect to our German servers, because by using our German infrastructure, you will get probably, not probably, but for sure, the highest speed that you can have, but you will get one part of the protection that we offer there.
Thank you very much. And for sure, we have people sitting here. Do we have someone who would like to ask a question to Mr. Schmohai? Okay, I will give it here.
Hi, thank you for the interview.
Thank you.
Maybe I hope that this question is not too technical, but I try it. Are you doing HTTPS interception?
No, we are not doing HTTP interception. We are not granting any kind of certificates on our end like our competition is doing. That means we cannot inspect the traffic.
How
question was plain there.
How can you cache internet content and speed up the connection if you're not doing HTTPS interception?
We are not speeding up connection. Maybe I misspoke something, but
maybe I didn't get it right. But I thought it was told that the internet connection maybe get a bit faster if I use a VPN.
Yes, for example, I will say an example in Germany. If you are connecting through Vodafone or Deutsche Telekom, some services are prioritized, some are not. And some services are definitely working slower when you're accessing them. By tunneling WireGuard connection to HTTPS with our service, HTTPS mostly is not throttled, mostly. And by tunneling a VPN to HTTPS to access our service, you are overcoming this throttling that is for some services in place. For example, there was big discussion in Germany about right to access all the services in the right way, but we know for sure that not only for two mentioned providers that have, but others as well, some services are prioritized, some are not. And by using the VPN, you are tunneling your complete connection to our server, and there we have another peering contracts with other providers, and in some cases, you can definitely speed up your connection. We see that in the gaming world a lot.
Okay, maybe I add a small response. I experienced a different thing because I was administrating a big DOT DNS caching server. And I got the experience that because of missing eDNS client subnets, we got slower connections. So if you're not using the DNS server of your ISP, you maybe get a slower connection to not a local data center if the service is distributed over the whole world.
But if you are using HideMe, or I can tell you, I'm not completely technically. We have a team that's doing that, but I know a bit about technique and how we are operating. By using HideMe, in some cases you don't need to use a DNS at all to connect to our service. There are direct IP connections to our service, and if the particular HTTPS connection or any connections is not shaped down, then I don't see the problems. With HideMe, we have our own DNS, that's for sure. And by connecting to our network, you're using our own DNS. You are not using your provider's DNS in this case.
And there's also something you called hopping. So if you try to connect to a service in Australia, then you have a larger direction or faster direction.
Yes.
Right?
We have another option, another feature is called multi-hop, where you can select your entry server and your exit server. That means you would like to communicate with Australia. And by going to your normal ESP provider, the usually end users or broadband ISP provider have cheapest peering possible between providers itself. But if you are connecting throughout two data center, that peering, we can choose which peering we have and which route we can connect to data centers. And by using a multi-hop, you are selecting, let's say, our server in Frankfurt, you're entering our own network, going through our own peering and routing to Australia and going there out to our own servers and accessing content there. In this case, we definitely see increased speed.
Interesting. Any further question? Over there.
Yeah, thank you for explaining the backgrounds on HideMe. But if I want to have a secret speech connection, it is not protected by a VPN. What would be a solution? My Vodafone could listen up to my conversation.
I didn't get the question right now.
Okay.
Secret speech over what app exactly?
If I connect now with Vodafone over HideMe, I have a protected connection. But I have, if I build up a phone call on my mobile phone to you, for example, Vodafone could listen, or somebody else could listen to our conversation. Or am I wrong?
The connection is only protecting between your end device and our server. When the connection exits our server and connect to any third-party service that is in internet, for sure in that case is not connected. This is the reason why I explained the VPN is not one key term solution. The VPN is only part of the solution where we protect the connection between your end device and the internet itself. What is happening there and what service are you accessing and what credentials, then we don't have any kind of influence, and for sure we cannot protect with VPN with that.
Yeah, and I think we just need to state that classical phone calls are not private.
The classical phone over a usual GSM network or provider network are definitely never routed through the any IP traffic. They are going another way and they are not protected. In rare cases, if you are using voice over LT or so, it is partially protected, but definitely the normal phones that you are using over your mobile providers are not protected.
So for private or conversations, it's highly recommended to use end-to-end encrypted messengers. But we also know that WhatsApp claims to be end-to-end encrypted, but they can decrypt what you say. Therefore, we had the initiative for Volla Messages. I think it's important to have a infrastructure not only for text messaging, also for making calls, voice calls and video calls. Yeah.
For sure, that's the case. In this case, VPN, if you are using Volla messaging or any other applications, your internet provider or whatever virus LAN you are connected to cannot see that you are connected on the infrastructure of Volla to messaging, but the connection itself needs to be encrypted on the application level.
And some big tech has already introduced core services like Google. It was kind in the news, also in the mainstream media, that they published a core service to look at your messages or content before it's encrypted and sent in end-to-end messaging apps. So this is the approach of big tech in cooperation with European or US government, that they introduce a software that looks at your messages before it's sent and after it's encrypted if you receive messages. And if there is something that isn't compliant, let's say, then some organization is notified. So, and therefore it's so important to have also secure devices where the whole source code is published and so where this kind of mechanism is not happening. Yeah, further things. Maybe if not, I just would like to highlight for business customers. There you have also some other comment.
Some easy question, I think, about pricing.
Yes.
Is it included in the Volla Phone board if I buy the Volla Phone, or is it a monthly fee, or higher? How high is it?
So each Volla phone devices get one-time code, activation code for 1 month premium Hide Me that you can try, and afterward you can go and purchase the VPN subscriptions on our website. We have different promotions for different years, starting from monthly $9.99 and going, if you take a longer subscription rate, then the price per month going down even under €5 in this case per month. The current promotion you can see on our website, and we have 30 days money back guarantee. If you're not satisfied, you can contact our support and we will refund definitely immediately your purchase.
And you have a heart for people who have not the budget to pay for VPN. So there's also a free usage option with limited access points. I think it's understandable because the VPN needs also to be funded to drive it. So there's a free usage, and I recommend everyone who can afford it to pay for a monthly fee. But it's true, if you buy a Volla phone, you have a voucher code to start using even the premium service for free.
Exactly, for 1 month. And as you mentioned, we have free VPN. In last times, I don't mention that so often because the connotation with the free VPN is always we are selling some kind of data.
Yeah.
This is not the case, and I would like to emphasize one more time, we are not selling any data because we don't have any data to sell, but we would like to support freedom of speech and freedom of accessing information. Therefore, we have a free VPN that you can register and use. It is not for sure limited to 10 different servers in different regions that you can connect. There is no data cap, data limit on anything. You can use it completely and it always renew after 1 month. But if you can afford, we would definitely like you to buy a premium one. Because there is much more in premium offering. It's not only the access to the locations as such, it's also possibility to overcome geo-restricted streaming location and some other features.
Thank you very much. So, yeah, thank you very much for joining the Volla Community Days and being our partner for a long time. I thank you for cross-promotion to help each other to spread the news about our services. And yeah, so, and also for the audience here, thank you very much to be so patient and waiting for so long. It was a long day, so many information, and I think you need some days to reflect everything. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. We will restart fresh and awake, and we will have also very interesting and inspiring demos, interviews, and presentation and greetings. Thank you very much, Mr. Schmorhai, for joining, and thank you, the audience, to be here and enjoy the summer day. Tomorrow it's much cooler, much more convenient to come in that room and enjoy Remscheid if you are coming from abroad. If you go down the street, we have a medieval old part of the city with nice restaurants. Thank you very much. Have a nice day and have a nice evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much and have a great day today. Bye-bye.